My name is Chad Marchand. I am Vice President of the National Center for American Indian Enterprise Development. We are here today in fabulous Honolulu, Hawaii, in front of Iolani Palace. This is the very first time that the National Center is hosting an event in the state of Hawaii. So we hope you enjoy today's presentations that will range from federal contracting to small business owners talking about how they got started and transitioned through COVID. We'll also be highlighting some agricultural businesses here in Honolulu. And we hope you enjoy the presentations throughout the day, and mahalo.
My name is Michelle Kauhane. I am born and raised here on Oahu in a town on the east side of the island called Kaneohe. My current job is that I serve as the Senior Vice President of Community Grants and Initiatives at the Hawaii Community Foundation. Prior to coming to the Community Foundation, I served as the President and CEO at the Council for Native Hawaiian Advancement. And my background has really been in microfinance, mortgage lending, and focusing on addressing financing needs of folks who reside in the homesteads on Hawaiian homelands. I remember being in middle school, growing up in Kaneohe, and the biggest thing that was happening in our life at the time was we were getting a mall. Windward Mall didn't exist. It was a big empty field with some Quonset huts. And where Windward Mall exists today is where we would pick flowers to make lei. That was the go-to spot. The mall came, and I think like any evolution of development, new opportunities for small businesses, and I think we've seen that grow over the years. I would say in the last 20 years, the biggest growth and change that I've seen in the small business sector is that Hawaii has really, our small businesses have tapped into our culture and indigenous innovation and really started to create products, and a lot of times in clothing. I proudly wear a design from Maika Kamoali'i. We've seen a lot of development and inspiration through culture and our arts in clothing designers, and we've seen a huge influx of local designers with clothing lines, with shoes and hair products, but we've seen a lot of folks tap into that native innovation, taking cultural practices and really starting small businesses that are tied to our people and this place. In terms of Native businesses, while we make up about 20% of the state's population, our Native people represent less than 10% of our small businesses. However, small businesses in general, I think, have had opportunities to thrive here in the islands, largely dependent on tourism. And I think that during COVID, we've seen a huge downturn with many of our small businesses that have had to shut their doors. And lots of the requirements that said you had to have a storefront to get support for that business really hurt some of our smaller Native crafters and folks who really worked out of their home or specific fairs throughout the year that were more cultural. They probably had the hardest impact. I can tell you from the seat that I sit in at the Community Foundation, it was a huge influx, as you know, of federal dollars, and many of our nonprofits did not have sufficient capacity to handle the kinds of federal dollars that we were talking about in those large amounts. We entered into a space as the Community Foundation that we never thought we'd see ourselves in, and really helped both city and state government disperse about $60 million in CARES Act funds. I think that our state and city have tried, but most of these programs have been requiring reimbursement only. And that has been a struggle on small businesses because they needed dollars to pivot to be able to sanitize and follow protocols, but were really heavily required to spend those dollars before getting them back. And so both in the nonprofit and small business sector, while our government tried to do as best as they could, it was very challenging for smaller businesses and nonprofits to really have to put that money out before getting reimbursed for what needed to be done in response to COVID. Native Hawaiians, like many others, we're tied to our land. So our original creation story of Papa and Wakea, and a tight connection to Kalo, to our taro here in Hawaii, and Haloa. And so we are, like I said, like many other Native cultures, we are tied to our land. The health of our land equals the health of our people. They are one and the same. And I think that while we are responding to COVID, what we saw here in the islands and what we've loved and embraced as Native people is we had a chance to breathe and to return to our land, to be one with nature, to enjoy our beaches without all the visitors. And while we love and know we need visitors, we saw that the lack of overcrowdedness regenerated the health of our lands and reminded us, just like COVID, that we must pay attention to those things that we take for granted. Again, the health of our land equals the health of our people. And so we really need to refocus and focus our efforts into our land. Many of the solutions that we're looking for in climate resilience, in sea level rise, science today is telling us that our native ingenuity and our cultural ways and the ways of the past are the answers. And we have proof today. Science is telling us that what we need to do is go back. And so I'm hopeful that we will see new small businesses develop out of that, tapping into that native innovation, to help be part of the solutions in addressing the challenges that we see following COVID now and into our future. Yeah, I think, again, like most cultures, Native cultures, we hold our, what you refer to as your elders are our kupuna. And we hold our kupuna to highest reverence, respectful, and they are the reminders of our kuleana, or our responsibility that we have, not just to ourselves and to our communities, but to the world. And so we, like you, we definitely believe in how do we care for our land and our aina for generations to come. A lot of intergenerational programming going on so that we tie our youth to our kupuna. But oftentimes I feel that we've lost some of the presence of our kupuna. When we look at what's happening in the world today, it's hard to believe that we're fully engaged, we're fully connected. Sometimes we're not listening to that voice as closely as we might have been in the past. When I see what's happening around us, that we have always been grounded in that voice, having that knowledge to ensure that we're taking a good path forward, what we would call a pono path. And sometimes we need more of our kupuna voice and encouragement, given what we're dealing with in the world today. I think as a community foundation, we are investing in the Council for Native Hawaiian Advancement, which is a nonprofit that has been focused on helping local small businesses, and they focus on Native business. Following COVID, the council launched what they called Pop-Up Makeke. Makeke equals marketplace. And Makeke really started because Merry Monarch, which is a large hula festival, where many of our local artisans and crafters would rely on most of their annual income from sales made through this large hula festival. When that was canceled, the council really turned to what are we going to do? So many of these artisans had invested their liquid capital, their liquid cash into having product to be ready for the festival. And so they did Pop-Up Makeke to help these artisans get through the pandemic. What ended up as being a pop-up now is existing today with meaningful partnerships, not just here in Hawaii, but globally. We are not required, people couldn't travel to Hawaii, but it was a way for us to share Hawaii with the world. And so it's been wildly successful in connecting local small businesses and Native artists and crafters to a marketplace that they might not have been open to prior to COVID. So at the Community Foundation, we've been supporting efforts like Pop-Up Makeke and other small business efforts to leverage the federal dollars that have been flowing to the state. And we really need to look for more ways that we can help support local business. We're unique in so many aspects, sitting in the middle of the Pacific on a beautiful island state. You mentioned Jurassic Park, and there have been others that there have been efforts over the years to really encourage that industry, the film industry, to think of Hawaii as a place where we can and should encourage more filming. It creates jobs and has direct impact on our economy in many ways. And then we get to share the beauty of our island state with the world. We're very careful in that oftentimes Native culture is exploited to look like something that it is not. And so I do think that some of the advantage of having the film industry film here in Hawaii is that we get to be the authors and the storytellers about who we are and connect ourselves to the world in a culturally appropriate way, and to be the own storytellers of our story, of our people, and of this place. Oftentimes we have these visuals of Hawaii with grass shacks and grass skirts and flower lay, and that is the visual. And I think that Hawaiian culture and who we are as a people, we have so much more to offer. We're more than the entertainment. We're more than the hula dancers and the beautiful singing and the strumming ukulele. That there is so much more about who we are as a people, the way we've navigated around the world. Some of the best navigators using the stars and the weather conditions and the moon phases. When Cook arrived here in Hawaii, it was one of the most sophisticated irrigation systems that they had seen. And so there are so many parts of our culture that we can tap into outside of these images of hula girls and beautiful dancers and melodious voices, that there's so much more to who we are as a people. And I would love to see the industry really open that up to the world. The reality of why that is so important is because when the imagery of Hawaii is of just beautiful images and hula dancers and glorious beaches and sunshine, it masks the true struggle, the challenges of Native people to be trying to survive here in our homelands. When Native Hawaiians make up the highest percentage of children in the foster system, incarcerated and homeless, that those things get hidden and disguised. Small percentage of our local small businesses. There are so many areas where we need to focus our attention, and the solutions don't come from that imagery, right? It's difficult as it is to get folks to travel. So I mahalo you for taking the time to come here, to plant your feet in our ground, to look at us face to face and to understand the real challenges here in our islands and to be a part of the solution. Oftentimes it's difficult to get folks out to Hawaii because of the imagery, and people think, oh, it's just a junket, they're gonna go to Hawaii. This is not really about work, this is about pleasure. But there is so much work to be done here, that the challenges are real and that they go beyond sometimes what the imagery looks like. And so I really appreciate the time and the effort of your organization being here to discuss those with us and to help be a part of the solution. At the Community Foundation, we're very aware and we fund programs and projects that deal with ACEs, right? Adverse childhood experiences. And when I put that in a Native context to think about what, we can't always explain the generational trauma that the overthrow of our kingdom has had on our people. And oftentimes our Native folks are seen, our people are seen as a little bit ku'e or activists, right? That we're chanting, we're grounding ourselves in our protocol, oftentimes from feeling unheard or being invisible to our government. And while in philanthropy, we understand clearly that we need to invest and that we need solutions to adverse childhood experiences, if we just take the reality, when I think about my father, whose father forbid him to speak his language, forbid him to practice their culture, and what trauma that had on a child or 7 children that he had, and then how they translated and raised us to be good Catholic children who went to private schools. That practicing our culture and understanding our language, we didn't think about it as trauma until you look back at my age, being over 50, that the same issues that we tried to solve with children in the foster system and having adverse childhood experiences, we really need to dig deep into Native issues and understand that those are the same, that there are multiple adverse childhood experiences in generations of Native people who were forbidden in Hawaii for so many years to prevent being who we really were, to suppress that part of ourselves. And so when you see Hokulea going around the world, when you see the revitalization of our language in the charter school movement and Punana Leo, and you watch this generation of young leaders emerge, they have a different viewpoint or perspective of the world because they've re-engaged with their culture. They are in tune with who we are as a people, hold their heads up high, and they are proud of it. And so we see the next generation of leaders come into their own, and I'm just extremely proud of watching how that's evolved because of the revitalization of our culture and our language. And it shows, it's vibrant in the next generation of our leaders. I just sent a large email out today. The Community Foundation announced a $7 million grant program to 194 organizations. And in a story that I shared as we made that announcement this morning, I reminded our community of a visit that I had with a leader in our community whose name is Twinkle Borge. She is a leader out at the homeless camp at Waianae Boat Harbor with our houseless community of over 250 Native Hawaiian families. And in a visit with her recently, one of the takeaways that I walked away from that meeting was, she said to me, you give somebody kuleana and bam, you awaken their mana, their spirit, their power, right? That we all have a role to play in our community, and small businesses definitely have a role to play in our economic revitalization and in a healthy Hawaii. And so it's just a matter of no matter what size your business is, if you're in the movie industry, if you're a cultural practitioner, if you're an IT person doing apps, right? We all have a role to play. We all have significance, and culturally, that is who we are, right? We were interconnected, that we were not individuals for individual success. We were about communal success. And so embracing our individual kuleana to understand that it has collective impact, that was my biggest takeaway from a leader who is dealing with one of the most difficult struggles we have here in housing our Native population, and the struggle that it has been to survive here in Hawaii based on housing costs. But she really made me think about, you're right, that we each have kuleana, and when we understand and we tap into what our own respective kuleana is, whether big or small, it really contributes to the collective well-being of all of our people. Land was central to everything. Land is who we are, right? Whether that was our homes, our businesses, our schools, it was collective. And so the loss of land has us scattered, decentralized, trying to pick up the pieces from a million different places, right? So the foreign concept of ownership versus collective action and being in this together has had generational impact, right? As you share, generational trauma that we're still coping with and dealing with. Inside that generational trauma is still the brilliance of our ancestors. It doesn't mean we can't tap into it. We're getting better and better at it over time. And so while we think about progress over the years, I think the revitalization of our culture and tapping into and returning into embracing those practices that help us remind ourselves who we are as a people and why we are important to this place is really one of the bright spots, the silver lining, and all the chaos that we are seeing today. That is the calm, the internal calm, that we know who we are and we have that strength within each of us. You know, I will say that probably what inspires me the most is that for the first time, the Community Foundation is 104 years old, with a long history here in Hawaii from the days of missionary settlement here in the islands until present. I'm most proud of being a Native Hawaiian at the executive leadership level at the Community Foundation. With a president and CEO who is also a Native Hawaiian. So we have an opportunity, a unique opportunity to help our communities understand that our roles are not just about serving Native Hawaiians, but definitely about elevating the challenges that the Native Hawaiian community faces, and that oftentimes we are great leaders that can help make positive change, not just for our own people, but for all of Hawaii. And so I do think having significant leadership roles at the top levels of the foundation, it's been kuleana, but it's been also an awesome learning experience to both learn for myself, but also to be able to share about the challenges of our people so that there's better understanding within the foundation and other philanthropy to help connect, again, solutions to the challenges we know exist for our Native people. If we've seen any innovations in agriculture, I think that COVID forced us to look differently at our farmers, our ranchers, our food systems here in Hawaii. We are highly dependent on importing our food sources. COVID was so awesome because local people got to eat the fresh catch off of our boats. We weren't sending all of the fresh fruits, vegetables, and fish to hotels. We were consuming them ourselves. And so I think we're starting to take a really different look about the innovation and what we must invest into our food systems and our local farmers and ranchers, and not just saying support local. Support local has to be more than a bumper sticker. It has to be an initiative. It has to be an intention. It has to be where we dedicate resources to grow that reality. The Community Foundation does also have an initiative where we are committed to the year 2030 around, it's our freshwater initiative, to have 100 million gallons restored to our aquifers. That we know water is life, and that if we're not paying attention to regenerating water, to reuse water in the ag fields, and to make sure that our sheds are cared for, that in a tiny island state, we could be in big trouble. So that is one area at the Community Foundation, our freshwater initiative, that we have a long-term commitment to regenerating our aquifers. How do we translate that native ingenuity into government process and current technology today, right? Embracing and walking in both worlds, being able to incorporate both. And that's been part of the Freshwater Initiative's challenge. How do we, we've done a pretty good job to date, and now it's really about, we talk about the cost of affordable housing. Well, now if we want them to recycle water, that adds cost. And so it's weighing out the balancing act of they're both equally important. Back to the kuleana, we all have it, right? Some big, some small, but it's really the purpose around collective action. At the Community Foundation right now, we're hyper-focused on what we call our change framework, where every letter of the word change stands for a sector in our community that we know: community economy, health and wellness, arts and culture, the natural environment, government and civics, and education. And everything from community economy to education, they're interconnected, as our people were and our way of life was. But we're really digging deep into data and making decisions about where we direct resources, where we see the deepest inequities and the highest needs across the state. And so freshwater is definitely one that impacts all communities and is a statewide issue. My son was born on the island, the Hawaii island. And for a period of our lives, about 10 years of our lives, my husband was a commercial fisherman. Not a huge commercial fisherman, a 25-foot boat with he and either one or two other men. And that was our livelihood. That he fished in the summertime for ahi or tuna. And in off-season, we bottom fished for opakapaka or onaga or other types of i'a. And you will love and enjoy the auction block because it is such a significant part of our culture and who we are as a people. But just really fun to watch that whole auction come to life as fishermen unload their boats, and the daily market, and just the whole issue of supply and demand and what happens, right, at that auction. But really interesting and a fun exercise for you to see. I'm going to say this very carefully because it's a issue in Hawaii that has been difficult, and I do think that the Community Foundation has a role to play. After, I don't know, over 70 years, we've just refreshed our mission and vision statement to include equity. And that as Native people, and as we look at what's happening around the world and the discussions around dismantling structural racism, in Hawaii, that has been a challenge for Native people because while very different than the conversations happening on the continent, where we have Black, white, or BIPOC communities, we're talking about Black, Indigenous, people of color. Hawaii has been blessed in many ways that we're multiracial. We have so many ethnicities. I'm Hawaiian, Chinese, Portuguese, and many people are multicultural. We have many different ethnicities. And as a result, the systemic racism that does happen, the institutional racism against our Native people in our homelands has been hidden. It's been a hidden issue of not being able to address and elevate the disproportionate impact that Native Hawaiians have had in many of our statistics that you're probably very familiar with. And so being here as another Native entity to elevate the voices of our people, to help tell our story, to help create solutions to the issues that our people face now more than ever, is a critical time for us to say that while the issues in Hawaii look much different than they do on the continent, they often get hidden and disguised, while our Native people have been disproportionately impacted across the board in so many different areas. And so I think that your being here at this time, coming here to the islands at such a critical moment in our nation's history, is really a turning point for our Native people to help as other natives to elevate the voices and the challenges and to collaborate on the solutions to really make a difference in the years to come. NEI Hawaii, definitely. So I think that NEI Hawaii is one of the first Native-owned businesses that has created space for artists and other Native folks to have a marketplace. So they had to move because when Ward and Kaka'ako got developed, it was one of the things where they had to move locations. But I'm happy to put you in touch with Maile Meyer. She is a rock star, the original founder of NEI Hawaii, and continues to support our local businesses. So data becomes a hard topic in Native community. We often hear our communities saying, this data is about us without us. And so while the change framework focuses on data that is collected through census or health reports, we're also leaning into what is called trust-based philanthropy, where not so much about the application, but really getting to know those organizations and understanding what data are you collecting. Here's the data we collected and here's the story it tells us. But really trying to connect data with stories and never having a data set without a story or a story without data. And so while third-party data collection tells us a specific story, we're really starting to dig deeper to connect stories with what's happening on the ground. And is that in alignment with these third-party data collections, or what data are we collecting that tells a different or similar story to really balance that out? Because oftentimes our Native people are not seen. We do hear the term data deserts when it comes to our Native population. And so we're really trying to do a better job on building the capacity of organizations so that they can collect data so we have the proper picture of what's happening on the ground.
Yeah, aloha, my name's Lokahi Cuban. We're out here in the beautiful Kahuku on the island of Oahu. Our restaurant or our food truck is called Hawaii's Only by Chef Kale. I'm born and raised on the island of Oahu. I come from actually town, from the Honolulu area, a small valley in Pauoa called Pauoa. We started this truck back in June of 2021. I come from a totally different background. I've never cooked food before. I don't even cook food at home, to be honest. And this is just something new we wanted to try out. So we're pretty fresh to the food game here in Hawaii. We have a very small menu. We have 4 items on our menu. For this area in Kahuku, it's known for its garlic shrimp. So we have our own style, I guess you can call it. We call it the Hawaiian style garlic shrimp. We also have a seafood boil where we have clams, shrimp, Portuguese sausage, and locally grown corn, sweet corn. And then our other, I guess you can say, we have it only when we're able to source it, fresh fish. So we have a poke bowl. So we have a Hawaiian style poke bowl, and then we also have a spicy ahi poke bowl. And then our main item on our menu is called a lobster dog. Our lobster dog, everyone's like, oh, what's a lobster dog? And we tell them it's like a corn dog without the hot dog, stuffed with the Maine lobster. So that was an item that was created by judge on MasterChef, Graham Elliott. And he's good friends with my partner, Chef Kale. So they collabed on it. Graham moved to Hawaii, they talked about it, and Bryson came up with his own recipe and asked Graham to use the name Lobster Dog. The local community has been super awesome to us. This Kahuku community from, I guess you can say the North Shore community, they've been so open to us. The Kahuku community, if you look back, this is a very tight-knit community, and their thing is keep country country. So they don't like outside, businesses coming out here. If you can look behind me, the big wind turbines, almost 200 people got arrested. back in 2019, trying to stop the development of the wind turbines. So any big thing that comes into this community, the community rallies together and tries to stop it. So there's a lot of projects that try to pop up here, from homes to another hotel. The community's put a real big stop to it to try to keep this more of a, country lifestyle kind of thing. So when we opened, the community said, hey, come on. I've been in the Hawaiian movement since I was a little kid, from going to a Hawaiian charter school. So I've been around various different, I guess you could say, political things in Hawaii, where us as Native Hawaiians, face against big corporations or even our own government. So this community really said, hey, hey, thank you guys for coming out. And we employ a few people from the community. We have community members that come out here. We have live music on the weekends. We offer various specials to the kama'aina here, to not only if you're from Kahuku, but if you're from anywhere on this island or throughout the state that you live here, we offer various specials just to kind of say thank you to them. And for me, I'm really community oriented. So if I see like certain things, if I can help out someone in the community, we love to help people, and we love to offer even discount to the kids after school when they come walking by, and not all the time they can spend $13, $14 on a shrimp plate. So we do a thing where we offer a shrimp bowl for $8. We give our slush for $3. So we give a big discount. And then even if we see people like walking, like this community is so strong that the homeless community out here too, if we see someone walking out, we hook them up with a free plate, just tell them thank you, just to try to make everybody feel at home as much as Kahuku made us feel at home when we come out here, because I drive about an hour away. So people are traveling hour and a half away from the west side of the island, and then as far as the south, Honolulu, Makaha, which is about an hour and a half drive, no traffic, so about 2 hours with traffic, and people come out just to support us. So we really are grateful for our people on the island of Oahu. Our Hawaiian churros, at our Hawaiian churro truck, it's our own flavor. We create like a sauce that we put on top. So we try to source as much stuff as we can locally, because we want to support small local businesses and whatnot here. So we get our guava and our lilikoi from various people that grow them in their backyards. So we're able to use that in our sauce making. We pretty much went in blind, not thinking, okay, tourists are starting to come back, okay, let's try and get the tourist market. But a lot of our sales daily comes from local people, and just us, being able to promote locally via social media influencers, or just people sharing our food, hashtagging Hawaii's only. So I've never been in the food industry. One day we had an employee call in sick, and he was our cook for the day. So I knew nothing about cooking. The only thing I probably can cook is a cup of noodle and rice. And even if rice, my first time making 30 cups of rice, I messed up on the first 2 batches. One came out too hard, the other one came out too soft. So that one day when our chef called in sick, no one could cook. So I'm calling our main chef who's in town prepping, and he's like, oh no, it's super easy. So I'm over here learning how to cook off a text message. I'm reading my phone. Okay, 1 scoop of this, 1 scoop of that. So I'm like, oh, I'm panicking, thinking that, it's our first week opening and my food's not gonna come out good. But thankfully, I read the text message correct. This area out here, it became famous for shrimp. And then after that, everybody just kind of branched around it and started popping up different food trucks out here. Yeah, there's shrimp farms down the road, but nowadays I don't think anyone really farms the shrimp. Everything's brought and imported. Our biggest challenge is being able to have enough food to feed everybody during the day. You know, when you hear of lobster dog, everyone's thinking like, oh, what the heck is a lobster? Is it a lobster roll? It's like, no, it's our own blend of, it's like a cornbread outside with lobsters. It's like, oh no, it's not, you're not putting real lobsters. It's like, oh no, we stuffed that thing with lobster. And then on the weekends, we bring out live Maine lobster and we sell that at cost back to the local community. So if whatever they order off the menu, we'll cook up a live lobster for them. The island of Oahu, there's a lot of wild chickens now. You know, even at the airport, Honolulu airport, you'll find chickens running on the side of the road. So from what I was told growing up is when there was a big hurricane here. So here, like in the States, people raise game fowl for rooster fighting. So I guess back in the day when there was a big hurricane, it knocked the coops over and then roosters got out, and then after that, you know, they just spread. Our easiest way to find us is I tell everyone Kahuku Sugar Mill. We're in between Kahuku Sugar Mill and the beach bus. Look for the Hawaiian flag and our blue line flag flying on the top.
My name is John Kaneko, and I run the Hawaii Seafood Council, which is a 501c3 nonprofit organization. And I come from a research background, so we do research, education outreach to support the industry, the fishing industry, its reputation, how it operates in a sustainable manner, but also really the focus has been on the fish products that we produce. So quality and safety issues, and now more of the supply chain issues like sustainable practices and what's coming next, which is labor practices. Okay, so we're here actually we're sitting here at Nico's restaurant, which is right at Pier 38, which is really for our fishing village. Nico's is strategically placed here. It utilizes and buys fish right here at our fish auction. So the Honolulu Fish Auction is one of the companies right over here, which is really the focal point of our industry, which is really the interface between our producers, the fishermen, and the people that buy the fish and process and distribute. So auctions work to support the boats by getting the very best price possible by assembling all of the market forces on top of that fish. So any given day, that price is going to fluctuate wildly, and by the piece, by the hour, by the minute, demand can change. So if somebody gets a phone call, you know, let's say their shipment on the mainland was canceled. Suddenly they went from, I don't need anything at 5:30 in the morning to 6 o'clock in the morning. I need 5,000 pounds of ahi. Demand just went up, prices just went up, and you're caught behind the 8 ball because you haven't been buying. So auctions are dynamic, and they really respond to that market demand and supply. So what we're seeing here is we're at Pier 38, Honolulu Harbor, and these boats out here are members of what are called the longline fleet. Our longline fleet here is the primary fishing method and fish producers for the state of Hawaii. And they produce about $104 million dockside value every year, and that translates to about 32 million pounds of fish. Everything is very dynamic. So once you try to set up in business, any businesses, you got to be constantly adjusting. You know, where are we going? This market, this supply is changing. Okay, so all that stuff is occurring to us. So I've been at it since 87, 88. So we've seen all of the changes from 35 boats in the fleet. We now have 164 permits. This is the first limited access permit fishery for offshore pelagics or tuna fishing in the United States. That means that we cap the number of boats. It says you cannot have more boats. In other words, you can't have more businesses. That would be like saying in the city of Honolulu, you can only have 100 ABC stores. Okay.
So you
Okay, that's a limited access.
So you cap the boats. I assume you cap the catch every day too then?
The catch is controlled, and Charlie used to work for the Regional Management Council. And so, yes, all of this is managed. So we have total allowable catches, and we do have a quota on our big eye catch.
Okay.
And then we compare our fishing with the rest of the guys in the Pacific. We're competing with them. We're about 2% to 3% of the total big eye fishery in the Pacific, but this is the best managed and understood and the most transparent fishery because they're American fisheries, right? So we have National Fisheries Service through Department of Commerce overseeing these guys. Council process, they all come under NOAA, which is right over here.
Okay.
And so then we have all kinds of other things that are happening. Then U.S. Coast Guard. So just 2 days ago, I was here with the Coast Guard guys. So we try to make sure that, as far as the outreach goes, we try to make sure that, look, this is a public dock. Hundreds of people are coming down here to eat lunch every day, and they're looking at these boats. We've got nowhere to hide, right? Most fisheries, you kind of get through the port. You're not going to see what's going on or unloaded. So I don't know if you guys have been in Samoa. I was telling you about our Pacific Islanders too, which Charlie and I do a lot of work out in Pacific Islands. U.S. Pacific. So American Samoa, Guam, and the Commonwealth of Northern Marianas. Their fisheries very different, cultures different, importance of the fisheries very different. So Samoa is a prime example. Yeah, a huge tuna port, the biggest tuna canning industry there, but how many locals are actually involved in that business? So some of them work in the processing, but are they working in fishing? Not to supply that cannery, not much, not through seiners. So we have to always, we're looking at small boat stuff, big boat stuff. So it's all about business. So much of the discussion nowadays is about resilience and, sustainability of fisheries. And I think sustainable fisheries, how about an industry that has lasted and survived for over 100 years? So this fishing method is long line method. It's the primary way anywhere in the world that you produce fresh tuna for the sashimi market. Nets, you can't do it because of the quality of the product and how it's caught and what happens in the net. And so long line fish, we know that that's a very important thing to do to match that kind of onboard handling with the quality that you need to make a go of it in the fresh market. So that's a big deal.
So you said there's 38 permits. They're 38 individually owned permits?
Well, first of all, it's 164 permits.
Okay.
We're operating right now with about 140, 145 boats. Those are primarily small businesses, individually owned.
Okay.
And then there's a couple of family holdings that might add, if you work together as a family and all the sons have boats and blah, 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 there might be about 20 in that family group. And then a couple of guys have multiple permits, multiple vessels. So there might be a holding of 5 boats or so.
Great.
Now the auction is on the water. We've got water on that side, this side. So 2 sides of working docks. So the guys are not really berthed here. They're going to come here, unload, and then get going. Right inside there is a big refrigerated room. That's all it is. So this is, if you think about it, it looks like a pretty big boat, but once you get outside, it's not that big. And so these guys have a range. They can go across the ocean. Common range out here is going to be maybe 1,000 miles.
Wow.
So they're going to be outside of the 200-mile limit, which is the U.S. waters. And now they're in the international waters fishing right up against the foreign fleets. The Chinese, Taiwanese, Japanese. So the fishing method is get all the provisions ready to go, to pony up with bait, ice, fuel. The sunk cost already to get out of here is about $35,000.
Wow.
They got to make $35,000 when they get back.
Yeah.
So let's say a trip, they only make 10,000 pounds of fish. It's going to take them 4 weeks to do that.
Wow.
Round trip. So if they have 10,000 pounds of fish, what's the average price? See, this is how the numbers work. So average prices right now, let's say a year ago, the average price might have been run down to about $1. everybody's bleeding money at $1. You got 10,000. If you had a 10,000 pound load at $1, you owe the bank $25,000. So a lot of guys tied up, right? It's just immediate, just tie up. This is no good.
Yeah.
Today, and the last couple of weeks, boat averages have been over $10 a pound.
Wow.
Now the guy comes in, the catch rates are low. Let's say he comes in with 7,000 pounds for a month's worth of work, but he made 70,000 this time. So now it's like, okay, I pay the boat. You know, like, boats are, it's the basic business equation is you got to keep the boat going. So a third of it goes to the boat, a third of it goes to the owner, and the last third is going to be divided by the skipper and the crew, all based on hierarchy and you know, how long you've been there and whether or not you get a bonus and all this other kind of stuff. So that's kind of how it works. Big trips could be 35,000, 40,000 pounds. Now you're making money, right? If you got 30, 40,000 pounds of fish and you got a $5 average, okay, now we're making money. So like we say, I tell people in business, you're not done until you're paid. None of this is, everything else is just theoretical, right? You got to get paid for this stuff. The reason an auction works, this is a very rare thing in the country. The reason an auction works, these guys work for the boat. They don't work for the market. They're the interface between the market and the supplier, the producer. Producer's got to get the money out of it, and if you leave these guys the market forces to determine the price without competition, guess what? The price is going to be set at the lowest common denominator. You got to beat the import prices for them to buy. That makes no sense. So they compete out here. In fact, sometimes they compete so hard that the price goes kind of outrageous.
So to participate with a permit then, is that lotteried off, or is that, I mean, is there a chance to get into the system?
Yes, you have to buy in now.
Okay.
When they first had the limited access permit system, everybody that was in the fishery got a permit. So that was free. You're here, we document that you went out, you came back, okay, good. Now you got a piece of the pie. 65 permits were issued, and immediately they removed one of the guys because he was violating the rules. He says, you no longer get your permit, you're out of here. Those permits today, well, they were free then in 1992, I think. Where are they today? They're starting to sell them for $450,000. But from a small business standpoint, if you've got $850,000 to let's say $750,000 in a boat, sometimes you get that boat package with the permit for $750,000. Now you're going. So let's call it $1 million investment to get in this small business, but right? Because how many guys have a mortgage on the boat? They got a mortgage on the boat alone. They got to keep going. If the guy's already got the sunk costs in there, he's going to tie up. It costs more money for him to go out than to sit at the dock. So he's cutting his losses. We've got guys that haven't moved the boat since COVID because it's too big. So the vessel economics are not tied to, because it's the same boat, same fish, same limitations on shelf life, but you need to catch twice as much as the next guy to make a buck. Just because you have a big boat doesn't make you better. The little guys struggle because of safety at sea and everything else, but they're more efficient. What's efficiency in business? It's money at the end of the year. Okay, so let's walk down this way. This is great. You guys get to see this. This is a beautiful morning. And then as far as you guys are cued in on labor, might as well discuss it. Fisheries in the United States, fishing industries in the United States struggle with finding workers. So it's a generational thing. You think about the hard life that these guys go through. If you're a successful fisherman and you have sons and daughters, we don't want you out there because I want you taking care of my grandkids, because you're never around. So a lot of them don't get into it. So as that attrition's happening, that's happening in all American fisheries, we got problems, which means just like farm labor in the United States, we got to get off this whole thing of you can't have the immigrant farmers or I mean, why do we even have illegals? We should have contract workers come in, work, non-immigrant contract workers. Just come in, we need work. You need the money. over here, culturally, we've got Indonesians, we've got Filipinos, we've got some Pacific Islanders that come to do this. And so they're contract workers, contracted on two-year contracts. You should see it. They have an immigration district right here. The boat shows up. The guys, there's 3 crews on board coming to work. They all got their wheelie bags, nice clean clothes, come across the dock one at a time, right through the customs district, and there it is. Who are you? Take a picture of your passport, your number, and then we go, where's your contract? Oh, you're contracted to that boat? Okay, good. Where's your owner? Right over there. Once we get all the paperwork done, I'm going to assign you now to the owner, and the owner is going to walk you over, escort you over to the boat, and you've got 2 years to fish, send the money home, do whatever you want. But if they want to leave that boat, they can find another job and transfer right over. They can make that arrangement. Okay. So we got the fresh tunas here. Some of these are yellowfins. There's some big eyes in there. I know they all look like the same fish, but we see differences. So that's albacore. That's the white meat tuna there.
Okay.
And see these right over here, the big long ones. So these are marlins. We eat marlins here. We eat them raw. You guys eat raw tuna?
Yeah, I do.
Do it while you're here, because this is the best place to eat it. You're supporting our local industry, which we'll love you for. So please don't eat the imported frozen gas stuff. Okay? So you get the idea. So these guys have just been out. So the typical trip is leave the dock. They have to call up the federal government, by the way, and tell them that they're going out fishing. So they have a record that they're going to take a trip. And if they leave the dock, they have to declare to National Fisheries Service, are we going to go tuna fishing or swordfish fishing? If we're going to go for swordfish, we got to carry an observer. 100% federal observer coverage on swordfish trips. For tuna trips, it's a minimum of 20% of the trips are observed, meaning that there's a federal person, contractor, on board just to watch other people work. Can you imagine? I don't know about you, but I sit in my office. I don't have somebody overseeing me, but I know I have compliance issues and everything else, right? But I don't have the guy sitting there. We produce 60% of the American swordfish came right out of these boats. The problem that we have is Hawaii people traditionally don't eat that fish. Swordfish is an American steak fish, so it all goes East Coast. Most of our swordfish from here goes to feed the market in Boston, New York. And we start a season, our season starts first of the year and goes right, it just petered out maybe a month ago, 2 months ago. So we've got a 6-month window where we're the supplier. And then all the other countries come on board and we compete. So, as you guys are involved in all of these businesses and business development, this is an industry where you've got a lot of opportunities, but man, you got to find the niche, the right niche, because you're competing with an international supply, a market that doesn't seem to recognize the difference.
Right.
Because all they care about is price.
Yeah.
You can get all the NGOs and all the environmental kids and everybody else going, oh no, we got to eat sustainable, clean, this, that, blah, blah, blah. And what's next? Go down and buy a poke bowl that's from imported product. You're not even supporting this. So never mind, you want sustainable, buy American. Because it's managed.
Yeah.
We know exactly what they caught, what they threw away, right? Because we have observers. If you ask, why are there observers on board? Because of protected species, right? Turtles, birds, sharks. So they don't care. They do care about what you're catching, but we don't have any prohibited fish species. So what does it tell you? Guy goes out fishing. He catches a variety and a range of fish, size classes, quality, and species. Each one of those is going to go into a different niche, market niche. You drop your quality down to cannery grade, you're going to get savaged. You're going to be paying a lot of money. It's going to cost you a lot of money to do that. So they are inherently limited by the shelf life of that product. So our problem with overfishing is being able to stay on the water, catch the fish, freeze it, high grade it, which meaning I'm only keeping the stuff that's worth a lot of money. That's the foreign fleets. Us guys are bringing in all this fish, marlins, this, even those fish right down there. You know, this is every fish is a money fish. The other day, even these fish are going over $10 a pound, right? I mean, we respect it. I respect all these guys do. It's like, it's money. They ain't mistreating that fish. They got respect for it. The better I take care of it, the better quality. The better quality, the better money I make. So don't be messing with that fish. Seafood business is fun because of the variety, and it's fun to eat, and it's good for you. I mean, we don't have a lot other food commodities that you can say that this is actually good for you, and you're not getting enough of it, right? Can't say that with beef or pork or bacon. I wish we could. But eating fish is good for you, and we're a fish eating culture here. So you see the main reel? Yeah. This is called long lining, pelagic long line. So all of our gear, the fishing hooks, are going to be suspended into the water column by these floats and hooked onto the main line. You got probably about 25 to 30 miles of main line. 1,500 hooks, baited hooks, that you put a mackerel on there and toss it. What do you think? And it's going to take them from 6 o'clock at night to maybe 5 o'clock in the morning to haul it all back. So now, 24-hour cycle, 1,500 hooks. What percentage of those hooks caught a fish for you?
What percentage do you think?
What do you think?
I was saying 10 to 15.
Oh, man.
Is that high?
That would be a platinum vessel with titanium and everything. It's about 1.1%.
Oh my God.
1.1%. You fishing 1,000 hooks, 1,500 hooks. I mean, you're looking for a couple of fish a night, right? So here we go. Then you're going to do that cycle, 11, 12, 13, 14 days. That's already 2 weeks out there. So 2 days to get there, 2 weeks, 3 days to move the boat, trying to find a new fish or whatever it is, 3 days back. So in general, it's about a 21 to maybe 28-day trip turnaround. At the dock, they unload. Once they unload the auction, they clean up boat, fix, do any repairs, get ready for the next trip. Guys that make money do that extra trip a year. That means you don't sit at the dock for a week. You're turning around in 48 hours, you're gone. That's a lot of work, right? So when you're on the sea, all fishermen work like this, unless they're charter boat. They're gonna work there like crazy. That's why safety at sea is it's such a big issue, because they're sleep deprived.
Right.
Now, are these indications of labor abuse? These are independent contractors. You want to work? Work. You don't want to work? Don't work.
Yeah.
Right? You want to go? Go. You want to leave? You don't like your skipper? You don't like the food?
Yeah.
Go get yourself on the next boat and then call up CBP, right? Because you're not going to transfer until CBP says you are now transferred to this boat. That's where we're going to find you. As far as any labor issues, the guys have a good shake of it here.
Yeah.
They don't have the same shake working on a Taiwanese or a Chinese freezer vessel that is never going back into port, right? Wow. These are the problems. Not all of our fishery is based on these boats. Smaller boats can also make it here because of vessel economics, and they have different fishery rules, and they have access to different fisheries. So the thing is, he's going to do anything it takes to make money. On his way out, he's trolling. Then he gets to the seamount, then he uses hand lines to catch the fish. On the way back, he goes, you know what? I got to have some bottom fish. So he might stop and do some bottom fish too. And then he comes in and says, every fish is a buck, so he's going to sell it into a diverse market. How do you do that? Well, you don't want to be now taking your catch and running around town. You don't know the market price, you don't have the infrastructure, and you should be back out fishing. So you drop at the auction. Now all the buyers are here and they go, oh, you're the only guy that's got bottom fish today. You got great price. Good, now you made money. He comes into the town here, there's 50,000 pounds of tuna and it's not very good quality, and his is not very good quality. He's gonna take gas, right? So it's just supply and demand, and you know, if you're a producer, you got to keep going.
Do they have different bins like in there to separate?
For the hold, yeah. These guys, I'm not sure how they have their holds. Yeah, they have holds. They have some holds right on the deck. Yeah, so very versatile fishery. All right, so when we look at all these other development opportunities for Pacific Island guys, fishing is one of the key things that you would be able to survive. Well, not only for food subsistence, but that's also how you make money. And so it's very, very important to us. And so I think about any tribes or areas that have access to fish that others don't. It's really about figuring out the quality in the market. Because if that fish is way upstream, it's not going to compete in the market for the fresh, bright fish, right? Ocean run fish. You just need to know what you're dealing with. So at that point, if it doesn't sell so nicely as a whole fish in that market, do some value added. So now it's value added processing that you do it. Once you value added processing, then you're no longer chasing that market. So if you got a can of smoked salmon, the thing is shelf stable. It's sitting on the, what do you want? Don't worry about it. And when did you make it? Well, last year's catch, we got a lot, we froze some, thawed it out, and then we smoked it, and then we canned it. You did that all winter.
Yeah.
You're just banking money.
What's crazy about it, I don't know of a tribe. What tribe on the west side was it? Piala? They had a salmon
You have a cannery?
but they went out of business. So I don't know of a tribe now, stateside, that commercialized fishing.
Yeah, some of that is, that's what I'm saying. You got to scale it right.
Yeah.
Because I work for, I think it was Chugach. Must be the Chugach Nation up there.
Yeah.
A cannery. I go, okay, this is the Chugach guys. Okay, well, what do I know? I'm just working for the management company or the operation guys, and we do it. So you got to be dynamic. That's a lot of infrastructure, a lot of investment, but I just said that this is $1 million business right there. How many businesses can get in with $1 million? And hope to make a go of it for 5 guys. These guys even less. So you shuck and jive. That's why I like this business, because we work with the guy that catches 1 tuna, comes back, and he's happy. And then I've worked with these guys that catch 30,000 pounds a day or a trip for sashimi. For anybody getting this business, just catching is not it. You got to know exactly what are you catching it for, how are you handling it, what's the steps to get into the market and get paid, because that's the business. How many of these foreign guys ship to the United States on consignment? That means, I trust you, just tell us how we did. You give a buyer the opportunity to set his own costs. What do you think he's going to do? He doesn't have to be King Kong to market that thing. And what's he going to do? I'm just going to take my markup. There you go. Oh, this is all you get. So it's going to be a week later that you find out, what did you get? These guys know today what the auction results are. Every fish they landed, every fish got a barcode tag on it that tracks it all the way through the system to invoicing the buyer, to the readout for the skipper, tally it up, minus the auction commission, right there, and here's your cash. That window this afternoon, the guy's going to be paid in full, 100%. So you talk about businesses, you think, oh, maybe a business would be an auction that we could set up. What's an auction? It's a refrigerated space, but somewhere there is a boatload of money. Because you've got to buy the catch from every one of these guys. You've got $50,000, $60,000, $100,000 on a boat, got 5 of them.
Yeah.
Do that 6 days a week.
Yeah.
And you got to think, that's why I say, always got to respect that worker.
Yeah.
But this is a miserable job, it got to be. So unless you're really into it, or really, this is a good job for you compared to where you're coming from. I mean, if you can send home $400 or $500 a month, go find me Americans that can save $400 a month. These guys are cashing it, it's going. There's no expenses for them here. Room, board, food. Travel, they've got flown here. You want to get back, you repatriate it. That's all in their contracts. This is all cream, money. So as they work, they remit, you're at sea, nowhere to spend the money. So now they come home, they're not running around town spending the money. So guess what? It's going back home to take care of business, take care of their family. Smart guys here on in the labor come as a crew. There's a family, they already know they work together. So they move from the village. They stay on the good boats, good captain, good food, safe. We catch, we make money. They hold that boat. So when they leave for their 2-year stint, they bring in the next family group. And they say, no, we got you guys covered. Because they know they've got to stay on that boat. Meanwhile, they switch off. The family back in Philippines, operating the taxi business. Guys fishing for 2 years, send the money, support everybody. Switch out. They go back, now they drive taxi. And it's just like this. So we can see, even at this level of doing some of this kind of work, they're working together and they're building. So it's very, very important to them. They're important to us. We can't find Americans to go out there and do that.
No. But nobody wants to do that labor.
Nobody wants to do that labor.
Who's going to pick? And who's going to work in slaughterhouses?
Yep.
You guys have been in slaughterhouses?
Yep.
I have. I ain't going in there. I'm just surprised I eat meat after that. It's a surprise that I eat chicken after that. But fish it's not hot. Its body temperature is not hot. It's cold. I'm going to eat it. Somehow fish is okay, but those mammals. So all of this stuff, food production is a big deal, good opportunity for guys, but be thinking in terms of niche marketing and also shelf-stable products, if possible, because otherwise it's worth that much money because tomorrow it's worth a little less and quickly it goes down, right? So 3-4 days, it's lost its value. So you got to move. That's why airplanes, right? The auction, it's a United Fishing Agency, incorporated in 1952, set up by Japanese Americans. And it's now being sorted for the different trucks, the different companies. It comes out, the guys are over here with a barcode scanner, just like FedEx guys. So they know that that fish that was bought for this much money from that boat by these buyers is now released to the buyer. So this whole traceability of products is very important because in the olden days, there was no controls like this. So a guy with an ahi walking out of the auction is a normal sea. But a guy that doesn't belong there also can just walk right inside and pick up a fish and walk out. So nowadays, you're not doing that. So we track where everything goes, where it's going. We don't lose fish anymore. And so these guys are moving all the fish around in pallets. Inside, these fish are lined up in pallets on a row by the boat, sorted by the species. And then the auction moves just like a zipper along the rows. So just so you get the idea. So if these were laid out on the floor, you have a barcode tag, the boat name, and the barcode is going to have their registration number, all that. This is a big eye tuna. So it's called ahi, big eye tuna. One piece, gilled and gutted. The gills and guts are removed. It's 71 pounds. It came off of this cart, which is that trailer. And then it's got a unique number. And then the guy bought it, Hawaiian Fresh Seafood bought it, and he bought it at $6 a pound. So 6 times that, so there you go. Right, so when you think about it and you talk to children about it, it's like, okay, what did that add up to?
And he weighs 71 pounds.
Right, so if you had a 100-pound fish at $5, what is that? It's a $500 bill swimming around.
So is that the sample they take out of?
Yeah, that's how we grade
Grade it.
you judge quality. So once
So
you
is that based on like color quality and texture?
color, texture, shelf life,
Okay.
right? Because if it's only good for cooking, price is going to be $1.
Yeah.
If it's only good for, let's see, low grade poke, right? Because now we got poke, but like for the people's poke and then for the high end poke. So it's just depends on the niche. And because we have retailers, wholesalers out here buying, they're going to find the value in every fish. But if a business is running on tradition and things are changing around you, man, you got to adapt.
Okay, I'm Charles Ka'ai. I retired from the Fishery Management Council here in Hawaii, the Western Pacific Council, which is the eighth of 8 regional councils in the U.S. I was their Indigenous and Community Program Coordinator. So I worked with communities in Hawaii, Guam, American Samoa, and Northern Mariana Islands. I've been an activist for a long time. We had a long, uninterrupted history in the fisheries. So trying to establish regulatory rights for them, for us, and establish a grant program was what I did for pretty much 20 years. And I'm retired now. So I'm a contractor for the Hawaii Seafood Council.
You didn't mention that you're an excellent musician.
Oh, yeah, my degree is in music.
On the walk over here, you're talking about just fishing in general. Could you go back through and tell us more about that?
Well, when this first fishery started, actually long lining has been here since the 1900s. It used to be called flag line. It was primarily done at that time by the Asians, Japanese that came here. They brought that tradition with them from Okinawa and Japan. And Native Hawaiians were always in the fishery. But if you look back in history, the strongest group, native group of fishermen in the community were Marquesans. So they transferred here from Marquesas and got into the fishery.
I'm learning right now.
But the fishery was about the size it is now. Okay, we got about the same weight of fish that came in. It was a different stock, group of stock. We ate different things at that time. Right now, the longline fishery is kind of focused on tunas, and that shows our Asian and our Japanese history, that culture coming in. So we're focused on tunas, pelagic fish. Most of the nearshore fisheries were native people, right? So the trap fisheries, the net fisheries, what we call paluahi, ikashibi, which is a kind of a multiple hook line that you chum to bring up the tunas, and ikashibi and paluahi was the main way we caught tunas. The other fisheries caught reef fish. So we had goatfishes, jacks, nearshore fishes, uku, gray snappers, and some of the ikashibi guys with bottom fishes is at 40 fathoms to 100 fathoms. You caught onaga, ehu, and these other deep water fish. There's a lot of history in opakapaka, which is the purple snapper, that was caught in 40 feet of water at one time, right? But right now you catch them out at 40 fathoms.
So the nearshore has really changed.
Yeah, the nearshore has really changed. So the trap fisheries are your crab, your reef fishery, where you catch a surgeon fish, other kinds of fish. So it was the community still depended a lot on the fishery. The net fishers and the trap fishers are going to be, well, let's put it this way. Hawaiians are still the trap fishers and the net fishers here. That fishery goes on and it's a family tradition. So it stays in the family. If your family trap fished, you probably trap fish. And I know there's traps right out here.
Are there names kind of like associated to that?
What do you mean?
Traditional names, people's traditional names from various cultures?
In the community, you know the families. You know the families that fished. The Kinis from Pauo Valley, they were all trap fishermen. The Ohais were trap fishermen, net fishermen. And now they're trying to get into a nearshore long line. So they're seeking an exemption to the regulation that prevents long lining within 50 miles. Because they want to target the yellowfin, right? And that's going to be inside that.
Are the Ohais just a particular community or
That's a family. It's a family. Yeah.
I'm at some highs, I think. The stand.
That's right.
I can't remember some of the other names, but most of those old traditions are held within families.
So the nearshore that you said has changed. Is that changed because of fishing, environmental, climate, over time, everything?
Everything.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Going deeper.
There was a whole system of fish ponds here. In fact, this whole area, I would say from Waikabilo on toward where the freeway begins, that was all fish ponds. So there was a long history of fish ponds. But for the fish ponds to be active, the fish ponds were self-recruiting, self-feeding. So to have a fish pond, you had to have that environment, that ecosystem that was there. So they call it fish ponds, but it was really like fish weirs. So you built a wall that held water inside the wall. Though the fish ponds were self-recruiting, self-feeding, and certain kinds of fish were raised there. In this area, it was primarily ava. Ava is milkfish. So there were 3 layers of fish ponds that came out here. They said that the milkfish from the innermost pond was the sweetest flesh, and coming out, the flesh was not as sweet. So there were 3 layers of ponds here. And it was attached to a stream. So you needed the streams to be fully operating because that's where the fertility was high. So wherever you see a fish pond, there's a source of fresh water there. And wherever you see a fish pond that's abandoned, the fresh water is gone.
You mentioned the 20% Native Hawaiian. Was that permitting or is that?
In 1978, they had a Hawaiian Constitutional Convention where we amended our constitution for the state of Hawaii. What they said was that because Native Hawaiians made up 20% of the population of Hawaii at that time, that 20% of the revenues from all ceded lands, this is all ceded lands here, all state lands that are leased are ceded lands, should belong to the Native Hawaiian community. All the foundations are in there trying to get that 20%, right? But the recipient is the Office of Hawaiian Affairs. The problem with the Office of Hawaiian Affairs, they've been in existence for 30 years, 40 years now, is the people, and it's an elected, the board of the Office of Hawaiian Affairs is elected by the entire population of Hawaii. So they represent certain islands, but they're elected by the entire population of Hawaii. The people that serve on the OHA board are elected by the entire population of Hawaii. They have a really difficult time providing service to the Native Hawaiian community. They seem to have a problem with deciding who's really Native, right?
Right.
So now we're in governance, right? So they haven't been able to deliver. When I was with the council, I said, look, 20% of all the permits here, 176 permits total, 20% belongs to the Native Hawaiians. Longline Association says, hey, they're freely available. At what, $120,000 to $200,000 a pop?
Okay.
In 1921, they passed the Hawaiian Homelands Homestead Act. And what that established was 50% blood quantum means that you're Native Hawaiian, okay? Since the Office of Hawaiian Affairs came out, they said, okay, you got 50% Native Hawaiians plus all the other Native Hawaiians that have just a drop of blood, okay? So now it's a mess of confusion. How do we deliver these benefits to these people when we don't really know who they are?
Right.
So we get into all of the politics of that. To me, that any regulation established by the state has to allow 20% of whatever revenues come out of that belongs to Native Hawaiians. But then, by my advocating that, it goes to a dysfunctional Office of Hawaiian Affairs.
Oh, yeah.
Still as far as trying to
It's a
get the
big
20%?
It's an issue for me. It rises and falls at Office of Hawaiian Affairs. It rises and falls at the state of Hawaii, depending on who's running and who wants our votes and all of this stuff, right?
The Council on Fishery Management works in the United States because we continually go back to our plans make sure that we're testing and checking on the performance of our management system and the regulations. And we address new information, data analysis that's telling us that it's either working or it's not. Or let's say the populations are getting stressed so that we need to back off the gas pedal, slow down a little bit. But we do have quotas here, and we have absolute confidence in the quality of the data, monitoring data, and the quantity of that data set is adequate to manage this fishery with confidence. So I would say out of the entire Pacific fishery for fresh tuna, we're a big eye. We're probably maybe only 2%, a little over 2% of the entire production in the Pacific, but it's the model for how to do this kind of fishing, pelagic open ocean fishing, sustainably. And sustainably to me is very well defined, meaning we're fishing within catch limits, and that we have our best estimates of what we're leaving behind in the population of the ocean that is not overfished. So we just look at it as a renewable fishery, a renewable resource. You take care of it, natural production will provide for us. You just can't overdo it. So when I first started in the business, it was go, go, go. This is the Western Pacific, last fishery to develop in the world. Let's go get them. So it's grow, but we also recognize that it's also the last opportunity to get fishery management right. You know, so let's keep doing this, keep working it. So we learn from the other fishery management councils and the different schemes. We know what works and what doesn't. So international fishery management, of course, gets up to the point, looks very official, but in compliance and in monitoring and the reliability of reporting, it's very disparate. We're just that 2% that's sitting in amongst the rest of them saying, we got nothing to hide, come on down here. We've got all of the studies, we've got all the monitoring data. These are third-party monitors, government monitors that go out of these boats. So we have full confidence in what we do out there, what's coming forward. And, you know, my shameless pitch would be, we're looking for sustainable and, fish, this type of fish produced in with decent work and for workers, fair labor. To me, this is the place to come. I have great uncertainty about buying a fish that takes on the country of origin from, for instance, Marshall Islands, which is actually caught by Chinese vessels, which I have no idea about what they do out there.
And actually, they've been kind of intruding right now in our fishery.
So we're having a lot of federal
interactions.
So there's a lot of people on Earth.
Yeah.
There's a lot of resources, and as you see from today, these fish. Are they fish? Are these righteous animals that we're going to revere and catch and eat and respect? Or is it just money? The international community, it's just money. So you're leaving money on the table out there, no controls. They're gonna go out and get it. If you got a freezer boat, you put it in a can, what do? You can bank the money. Now you can bank that money until the market comes back. Our guys are inherently lower volume because we have a fresh market. We do not do any value-added stabilization of this product, not even frozen. So by the time it gets here, there's an inherent shelf life on that product that you cannot overdo it. You cannot stay out there and fill that boat to the point where the quality is no good and you don't make your money back. So they've got to have this right mix of timing, the fishing effort, catch rates with the market, make money, but don't overdo it. So I think we have a very, very good.
21 days at sea, they got to come back.
They got to come back. The ice is melting.
The ice is melting. The fish is getting bad. They got to come back.
Is this duplicated on other islands, or is this the only island that's operating like this?
This is it.
This is it.
Yeah, for this style, yeah.
This style.
Yeah.
So Big Island used to have, Hilo used to have an auction.
Okay.
And in fact, that's probably where you would go if you really wanted to see more of the small boat guys.
Okay.
Handline guys, trollers. A lot of these handline guys, trollers, a lot of them are what we would call weekend warriors or just opportunistic commercial guys.
Yeah.
So when the bite's happening, boom, I'm not, never mind the job. I'm going to take a vacation and go fishing.
That's why we could never characterize the fishermen in Hawaii and for the council.
It's hard because they're non-commercial. Or
The guy's a painter. He paints houses, except for Thursday, Friday, and Saturday when he's out there bottom fishing.
And by the way, he's selling.
And
he
he's
does
selling,
have a market. And he has his license.
So under the Magnuson Act, either you fish all full time or you're not a commercial fisherman.
Which makes no sense, right?
Yeah, makes no sense, right? This guy's painting houses 3 days and fishing 3 days.
I mean, look at the expenses here. You got to make a buck.
Yeah.
Right? So a lot of people hustle right here. We look at our unemployment rates, usually have been very, very low.
Yeah.
Why is that? Because everybody's, they're employed, but they're underemployed. They're working 2-3 jobs.
We're actually at 5% now.
We're at 5% now.
Yeah, we're at 5% now, which is what we've been since I was in the labor force. It's been 5%. 5% kind of keeps the wages low and the jobs filled.
But pre-COVID, man, it was below 5.
Yeah, pre-COVID it was 2%.
We're at 2%. So even at that, when we talk about labor, and I'm always concerned about the worker, but I'm also concerned about the cost of production, right? So I always look at this stuff and I go, well, all of these products, how many of these commodities, when you look at the supply chain and the production chain, how are you going to squeeze more money out of the same ton of fish that you caught? The only way you're going to do that is by squeezing that labor. I don't see how else you're going to do it, right? You're going to squeeze that labor and it's just downward pressure on the worker. I look at it like, wait, let's be fair about this. Everybody, fair wages, decent job. Are you getting paid? Yes. Well,
But then with the wages they pay, we have to go offshore for the fishermen.
you're still going offshore to get them because nobody wants to work here. I mean, nobody wants to do this job here. And American fishermen work as independent contractors. They're not generally employees of the boat. They work for a share. Everybody goes out there. Gee, if we catch plenty, you get 1% of the gross. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, we catch like this and I get that. Oh, I'm going. Hey, by the way, did I tell you that if we go out and we only catch this much, you get 1% of nothing?
Yeah.
So it's like all for one for all, right? So that I always look at it like, when you go out there, skipper is not just the boss. I mean, he's running the show, and you guys are all supposed to be incentivized to work. But if I have to really, really, if you guys are not going to be incentivized to work hard, the harder you work, the better we do, then we're not going to get anywhere. So it's a piece of the action. These guys get it. Well, they get it both ends. Our workers have a set rate, a minimum wage, a minimum compensation plus bonus, performance bonus. So it's actually
And where we get the fishermen in Indonesia, the Philippines, their salary is supporting some family business back home. Right. They got a farm, they got a store, convenience store, they got something back home. So they work in this fishery for 12, 15 years. They go back home, they're running their own business.
And you're running your retirement too, right?
Yeah.
You build your retirement, because over there, I mean, it's a lot of places, it's like you got to take care of yourself. Culturally, we used to have fishermen in every community, every village, every group of people, every family had a fisherman. They had a very, very revered role. You're the guy that's bringing the ahi, man. You're the guys that bring the fish for me to eat.
Every year I'm going to be spending $200, $300 on fish for the family.
Right, and somebody else is bringing the vegetables, whatever it is, but it's all shared. Nowadays, there's a disconnection. Where do you get your fish? The market, the grocery store, the restaurant. That disconnection between fishermen and the public is really, really a challenge for us because we're not the happy mom and pop dairy farmer, right? Even that's a fallacy. But you go there, buy the milk carton, and what is it? Well, mom, pop, and two Holstein cows produced all this milk. Get out of your house and go drive down and see a modern dairy with 1,000 cow dairy. See what that looks like. So food production in this country, somehow agriculture usually gets a free ride. Farmer's happy guy. Farmer Joe and his wife and the kids and 3 Holsteins. It's like those guys are revered. Fishermen are vilified. And especially here, we've got a lot of energy that are vilified. So we spend a lot of energy trying to explain to people, we are not foreign fishermen. We do not fish like the foreign guys that you're supporting with your import dollar or buying imported products. I'm not doing that. We're trying to get you to understand the value added when you buy local, when you buy from a local fleet, and for the enterprise development, for the niche opportunities for any of your constituents is right there to play the source, sell based on the source. What is the story behind this fish? This fish is absolutely important to salmon cultures. Let's say it's a salmon export. Well, if I can buy salmon from anybody, as opposed to that native culture, that native community that actually, this is your buffalo. You revere this. Hawaiians, it's like ahi and fish out here. Let's go. It's salmon. Salmon culture is a big deal. But if you start selling that, there's a sizzle somewhere there. That's a marketing sizzle. That's going to get you in somewhere.
Yeah, we import as much seafood as we sell out of here.
I mean, people eat the heck out of fish. Yeah. We don't produce any salmon, but we eat the heck out of it.
Yeah.
Right? So
the imports come
scallops, shrimps, squid.
So how do the imports come in? I mean, are they the same process?
Right there,
Here.
Matson.
Oh, but not through the auction.
No, but through that process.
Every one of these wholesalers is an importer.
Okay.
Which is why we're talking out of both sides of our mouth, right? If the prices are high here, the guy can be, well, I'm buying, I'm keeping up, but I know I've got 10,000 pounds flying in.
Yeah.
So my average price is going to be somewhere here. Yeah. So our issue is, if somebody is in Chicago buying fish from a wholesaler in Hawaii, the question is, where'd you get your fish? From Hawaii. That's not what I asked you.
Yeah.
I asked you, who caught that fish? Oh, Hawaii guys caught that fish. It's an American fish. Now I have confidence in its origin, the management, sustainability, business practices, labor practices, U.S. Coast Guard safety at sea, environmental controls. You tell me it came from a country that basically slapped a label on it, country of origin label on it, and it came from a foreign fleet. I've got no oversight over that, and you don't either. Tell me how those guys do that work out there. It's
Can
all
they label Hawaii still?
you can volunteer. You can do it voluntarily.
Yeah, voluntarily, yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that.
So the state doesn't regulate?
Well, if you say it's from Hawaii, you better be able to trace it.
Yeah. They'll come after you if you mislabel.
That's why we were talking about traceability.
Okay.
So much, right?
So we can trace this fish in the market right back to the boat that caught it.
Boat trip.
Yeah.
And then if there's an observer on board, you want to verify that all this stuff is right?
Yeah.
Let's go look at the observer report.
If you want to find the place they caught it on the ocean, go to the log. Open up that
because
boat.
they're all tracked by GPS.
They're all tracked by GPS.
So the thing is that little Hawaii, you think, backwater. When it comes to this kind of stuff, we are the model for how to do sustainable fishing like this offshore. Because we want to know where the boats are, what are they doing out there, what are they catching, how are they doing, how are they catching, what are they catching, what are they releasing, what are they dumping as discards, and are they having any protected species interactions? That's a big menu of things to do. How are you going to get that done? Like we do outreach with little kids. How are you going to do that? Well, I don't know. You put somebody out there to watch, right? I mean, I could ask you if you washed your hands, but at some point I got to verify. Let me see your hands. Your hands are wet? Okay, good. But I have to verify. So we trust what we verify. Our guys with 20% observer coverage minimum on our trips, 100% on our swordfish trips, international standard, not even standard, regulation for this area, 5% minimum observer coverage. Where's the foreign fleets? They're not at 5% yet. We've been at minimum of 20%.
20% for 20 years, 30 years, yeah.
So we're leading the way. When I did the calculation for the entire Pacific, our observer data, which is verifiable data on what goes on at sea, little 2% Hawaii production was producing over 83% of all of the observer data for the entire fishery in the Pacific. Leave us alone. So all the sustainability requirements and everything else, and even the quotas, I've argued that if you want compliance with quotas, take the 2% that's in compliance and give them an exemption. The minute you see an exemption going to, what do they have to do? Carry the observer. You mean all they got to do is comply with the law and they get an exemption? Go. You get to see the Taiwanese guys lining up, the Chinese, and we'll get them all under control. And then you move on to the next thing.